Welcome into the Mental Moments podcast with your guide, Healing Hottie. Mental Moments is where we walk through life experiences, yours and mine, finding the ingredients to make life sweeter, a conversation to consider our minds, bodies, and soul, moving with gratitude, one step at a time. Grief can hit you like a brick wall and when you least expect it, but it is a part of the process of living that often doesn't get the attention it needs. Today, I'm sharing a little of my grieving journey and how I've managed through. Let's walk through this together. Welcome in. Welcome in. How are we doing? How are we feeling? What's going on? I really want to know, so be sure to drop it in the chat. Mental Moments is a conversation, honey, and today we are talking all about unexpected grief and the importance of acknowledging it when it happens, when it hits you. Now, this is a little bit of a heavier episode, but I do think it's an important topic to talk about as many people experience it. It's something that I've recently experienced, and I want to make sure that we are creating space for not just the light things, not just the hopeful things, but the hard things too. So let's jump right in. Now, in the last season of Mental Moments, I talked in a few episodes, I believe, about the loss of my grandmother last year in February of 2025. She was 74. She had a very full life. She survived by 4 children. She survived by 3 children. One has since gone on to pass as well. 10 grandchildren, and I think it's 14 great-grandchildren. We literally just welcomed in a new bundle of joy, a baby girl. And so I talked about the process of going through this at a time where life was very hectic and chaotic. And when I look back, I really did not have her make time for grief. A lot of things were shifting and changing. One of the reasons why is, unfortunately, people say, and this is true, around weddings, funerals, and baby showers, you will see the worst and the best in people. And unfortunately, loss of life has never been something easy. It's not something that we've been very well equipped for on my mother's side of the family. We haven't had to experience it as frequently. Versus maybe on my dad's side, like he had a ton of like family friends, and my dad's side of the family is massive. And so when we experience those losses, like more on a recurring, I won't say like all the time, but we tend to have them happen, pretty close together, because they are a little bit older. They're much older generation than, say, mine. It's not as difficult. And it's hard to say, but it's not, because there's so many of us on that side. And so during this time, we were just not managing that well as a family. There was some internal turmoil. There was some conflict. There were some very hard things. And I have a very interesting dynamic where my parents grew up in the same town. Both sides pretty much grew up together. And so they developed a strong bond with my grandmother on my mother's side. And so they even felt it too. It was very, very hard for them. They saw my grandmother as a mother figure to them on my dad's side. And my dad's mom has since passed years ago. And so really she was like the maternal figure for them. And so it was just a very, it just spanned across both sides of the family. There was conflict. It was a challenge. And then also, I talked about this in the last episode. Sometimes when you're caught up in survival, like you put a lot of the dreams, desires, you put it way on the back burner, but you also can do that with grief. And I did. Like I was very much at a time I was like, okay, I got to make this business work. I got to quit this job. I got to do all these things. And I was not concerning myself with like, but how are you really kind of thing. I was just moving through life. And so because 2025 really took a different shape than I could have ever anticipated, I just did not make time. And I think the other thing too is like when you're struggling with internal conflict with your family, forgiveness tends to surface to the top pretty quickly, of like if you're willing to. And so trying to manage the relationships that you're still able to manage here in this realm versus, my grandmother has since passed kind of thing, and thinking about our relationship, like it was all too much. And so I did not make time. And so that was 2025 in its essence. But as 2025 was coming to a close and I was entering into 2026, I just felt this overwhelming sense of heaviness. And it was a weird heaviness. It wasn't like a bad heaviness. It just felt heavy. And one of the things of like, we would always say about my grandma's house, I didn't understand it as a kid. And we would often like label it a bad thing. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. I'm going to be transparent. Can I be transparent with y'all? That my family would joke and say that my grandma's house was built on a gravesite, because when you entered into her house, all you would want to do is sleep. Like you would just find a bed and go to, I don't care, you were a grown child, what dog, you just want to go to sleep. And now I understand that like my grandma's house was just a safe space. Like you just felt like you could offload. Like we would see the good, bad, and ugly in everybody there, because it was just a place where you could just show up and just release for many years. And I just felt that same, it was weird. I felt this same heaviness again. I will never forget the date. It was January 18th. I was headed to an event to run for a client. And as I'm heading there, the song Superstar popped into my head, but it's a very specific version of that song. It starts off with Until You Come Again. And my grandma loved Luther Vandross. I love Luther. It's just something you knew about her. And the song popped into my head and I played it on the way there. I felt like I was at my grandma's house all over again. And I just start to break down into tears. And I'm parking and I'm just in tears. I'm like, girl, you got to pull it together, go to work. When I tell you, I don't even know what people said to me that night, because I was just like out of it. I was overcome with this feeling. When I leave the event that night, I'm like, it's all right, girl. Like, you knew it was coming one day. Like you were going to feel the sadness. Ooh, okay. Wasn't expecting to cry today, but here we are. So left that event, and as I'm like backing into my driveway, burst like full blown meltdown, like full tears, and I felt every single emotion at once. But I'm crying and I'm just like, I think I'm a little bit angry at the time of like, man, I didn't make time to be sad last year, and now it's hitting me like a brick wall, and it slammed into me every day for like until maybe the end of February. Like it's just like hitting me, and I don't even know what to do, and I still have to work, and I end up working on the anniversary of her passing. And so I'm even reevaluating that, right? I'm like, should I be working? Like, do I need a minute? Like, do I need to take a minute? And how do I say I need to take a minute? Because what I do is there's not really like PTO. And so like I'm even like going back to God in anger. I'm like, you called me to this business and now I can't take a second, or maybe I can and I'm just not saying, like all of these things are like blah, 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 blah. And this was my first experience with grief, because just a few years before in 2020, we lost my uncle, the only son that my grandmother had. And that was a process. That was an experience. But this hit on a different level. And I think it hit on a different level, one, because I'm so grateful for my grandmother. She's the reason why I know how to cook. But at the time, I had been as close with her over the past few years. And so it just brought up all these things. And I was like, I don't have time for this. But it was like, girl, if you're not going to make time for this right now, when are you going to make time? Because it is going to keep making time within you. And a few of the ways that I started to see like grief started to impact my life. I talked about this a few episodes ago, that I can present fearful attachment styles, or I could just like isolate when I get too overwhelmed emotionally. And so I had to really fight within myself not to do that. And I wish maybe in 2025 that I had sought out a little bit more support earlier on. Towards the end of 2025, I started to talk about some of the things surrounding my grandmother passing and just all the things going on within my family around that, but not really my feelings. And so now we're in 2026 and I am starting to negotiate a little bit on therapy. I'm like, well, I got to work. Let me just focus on this. Or this isn't really aligned with their schedule or my schedule. So I'm just going to, not bring that up. And I would bring up all these other things other than this grief in my therapy sessions. And so I would just kind of like let that sit uncomfortably. Sometimes I often forget this myself when grief sort of shows up, but grief is not just in loss of life. Like when we're going through life transitions, I've been through a divorce before, when I had a friendship breakup, when I've gained a new client, right? It has absolutely like brought on these moments. It can bring on these moments of like grief of like what my life was, who I was, like all these things, and how life looks so different. And though like I'm saying this now today, but in the moment it can be really hard to understand like that these things can bring on moments, spaces of grief. It's important in grief that you understand you're gonna have to talk about it, and you should talk about it as many times as you need to. It's important to have some sort of safe space. And I'm not insensitive to those who are not at the space where they feel like they have community. I absolutely encourage prayer. I absolutely encourage like journaling about those hard things. Video journaling is super, super helpful. Even in those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's so heavy. Looking back on it like days, weeks, months later, like it's like, okay, I made it through that hard thing. And it's okay to like express how I'm feeling about this. So talking about it as much and as often as you need to in some form or fashion absolutely can help you like process through that. It's important that you don't try to dismiss your emotions through this. Like, one of the things that I absolutely settle with is that not a guilt thing, but like I said, I wasn't necessarily as close to my grandma as I was when she passed. And so I was like, how sad should you be? But I'm like, no, girl, that's your grandma. Like that's literally a part of, who you became to be. It was a part in your process of creating you, biologically. And, again, she's the reason I know how to cook. She played into my love for Luther. She passed that through my mom, and my mom helped in it, immerse that within me. I had to go through the journey of like, okay, no, that feeling it deserves to be there. Feelings are a part of you. Emotions are a part of you. That's okay that you feel that. And that's natural to feel that because you had some sort of connection and relationship with this person. So yeah, that's okay. It's important to understand that like no emotion is the wrong emotion, but you've got to remember that like how you act on those emotions matters, right? Sometimes we can be in a state of grief. We can be angry, and the way that we communicate, the way we treat other people, because we're frustrated, because we can't necessarily change that feeling. We can't necessarily change. I can't change the fact that she's gone. Can and has at times made me a little bit snappy, a little bit distant. It's something that I remain mindful of. If you're a little bit frustrated, like just take a beat. If you need a minute, like say you need a minute. So that way you could just breathe. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. This one is very important, and I want you to hear me and hear me well. Sometimes when you're in a space of grief and there has been a loss of life, your mind can sort of twist that to see that as an invitation to quit. I will be fully transparent that that is something that it hasn't been present in this loss, in this space of grief, but it absolutely has presented itself in other times where it felt too challenging, too difficult. I did not understand. And so I want to just take a space and a moment and a time to say that if you are in a space of grief, or if you're just having moments where you want to quit or harm yourself or others, that you seek out help. And you can dial 988. It is still an available resources. You can dial if you are in a space where you are feeling like you want to quit, that you are thinking about or considering harm of yourself or others. There is still an available hotline. You can dial 988 and you can sit on the phone with someone and really talk through judgment free. And if there is a space where you need some additional support, they can absolutely walk with you through that. It is an amazing thing that we still have resources like that. And there's no shame in saying that. But I think it's important to, speak to that because, again, while that wasn't the case this time, it absolutely can be the case. That's one of the things that I said in the last episode of what I appreciate about my therapist so much is that she never assumes that I'm just well based on our last conversation. She never assumes that I'm unwell based on our last conversation. And so to have a support system like that, I'm so grateful, and it has made this grieving process, I won't say easier, but it's made it manageable. I don't take for granted. And that, again, this resource is available and open to anybody within the United States. I know there are many states like North Carolina, they have a specific hotline that you could call into. So even if you don't have time to take a Google search, even if those moments feel overwhelming, even if that best friend didn't pick up, even if you don't feel like praying right now, know that 988 is still an available resource to you. And so I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that those experiences are real and they happen. And I want you to feel absolutely supported and cared for and comforted, because there are people like me, if you're just watching this and maybe that's not your experience and you care for others that are going through a moment where they feel like they are just done and done for good, that they know that they have the space to not just keep going for the sake of keeping going, but they are truly able to be supported and be well in that. Grief can happen to the best of us, the strongest of us, the most quiet of us, the most resilient of us. It can happen to all of us. I like to think of grief as gratitude and awareness in reverse. It gives us a moment, gives us many moments to reflect on and process what we may not have had the moments to do then. It is a part of being human, but it's not something that you have to go through alone. You are not weak because you're feeling. So I encourage you as you go through life, if you're not going through a moment of grief, if you ever go through a moment of grief, that remember that your feelings are valid. Your feelings are real. Your feelings are normal. And be mindful how you act on them and give yourself the space to allow them to bubble up and flow through. Because that is a part of living. Grieving is a part of the living process, and it is a process of gratitude, a process of just experiencing life that I don't think that I don't want to say cherish, but I don't think that we value as much as we should. And so I want to now shift the narrative today, plant a new seed of just when you are ever faced in a space and time where you are hit with grief, it is okay. And you will be okay. Remember, this is a conversation, so make sure that you follow us on Instagram at Mental Moments and Healing Hottie so we can keep this conversation going. I pray what took me 12 steps takes you 3. Keep building a life you will be proud of, no matter how long it takes. Until next time.